I'm sort of the street Swami in this organization. I've kind of been out there getting beat up for decades. So I'm going to focus my topics on one of the teachings, but how you do it in everyday life, okay? How you can actually apply it to a difficult work situation or, an emotional struggle, because that's how I've learned these teachings, was by getting hit in the head a few times. So what we're going to do after this session, we'll put a note up in our little Telegram group and just let you put in questions you'd like answered, right? Like we'll have a discussion after every satsang. But if there's a topic you would like us to focus on, we're going to take sort of a poll and see what are the most urgent issues for you. Okay, and then let's get into it. Let's really, and I've had private sessions with people after the satsangs. So if a talk triggers something in you that's quite personal, feel free to send me a note and we can set up a separate time, okay? And we'll just get into it, because they're pretty, other than being in a war zone, I think everything's happened to me. Like it's just unbelievable what he put me through. And when I started to realize that none of it was killing me, then it became quite funny. But at the time, it was terrifying. So I think it happened so that I could be of use, right? And that's what I find when I go into the prisons and talk to kids, is when they realize there's nothing they can say to me that will upset me, that I'll be shocked at. It's very sweet, because then they just pour their hearts out. So, like I said, I'm here to be of service. So I'm happy to talk to any of you privately. And when I finish the satsang and ask for questions, we'll stop recording. Okay, so feel free to ask anything once the talk is over. Anyana Timandasya
Jana Shalakaya
Chakshurumilitam Yena
Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Okay,
now everybody mute. That was lovely, but
yes, mute now.
I think we better mute. Okay, the topic that I want to speak about today is something that has been a driving force in my life, and that's the power of forgiveness. And I've had two massive experiences that I will get into in this talk. So the first thing I wanted to bring up is that because of a lack of forgiveness, that's why we have wars in the world. That's why we have people shooting each other in supermarkets. That's why, a Christmas dinner turns into a fiasco because, a sister-in-law hurt somebody's feelings, or an uncle got drunk, right, and upset the proceedings. There are so many little things in life that are destroying people's lives simply because they won't forgive and forget. And as Guruji says, all of these things happen to us because of our samskaras. So every minute of your life is happening as a lesson. And the sooner we grasp that, the sooner we can move on. Because say somebody was a jerk to you in the supermarket. Well, you probably did that to somebody, maybe not in this life, but in a past life. So as good as we think we might be in this life, when an upsetting experience happens, you have to acknowledge that it's been brought to you for a reason. That maybe you are perfect in this life, but maybe in a past life, you were the bad guy, okay? And that's why when people ask Guruji about their past lives, he says, you don't want to know, right? You do not want to know how bad you've been or how horrible you've treated people. And, I've seen books written why good things happen or bad things happen to good people. And it may seem incomprehensible to a lot of us, but the reason bad things happen is because either to make us grow in experience, to develop compassion, or because we're paying off a karmic debt, okay? And as Guruji said, the trick to forgiving somebody is to forgive yourself first. Forgive your role in the story. Forgive your frustration with yourself for not being able to stop behaving badly. Forgive your negativity. Then you can find that forgiving other people is very easy. So, as Guruji said, in truth, we are the ones who cause our own misery. Nobody can really impact us in the way we think they can. So by solving our own feelings, then forgiveness flows naturally. And as he says, love always has to be the first choice. You always have to, if a situation happens and you feel that emotions start roaring in you, that's a sign that it's your karma. That's the sign of a past samskara that's erupting. And you might have noticed that you can go through a day and no matter what happens, you're fine. People cut you off in traffic, you know, all kinds of things can happen and you stay just fine. And yet one tiny little event will happen and you will explode. And that intense emotion is a sign that it's a past life and that it's something that has followed you for lifetimes. And if you can't forget it and you're sort of shaking and sweating, that's the universe trying to bring it out and remove it from you. So instead of trying to ignore it, trying to, you know, go get drunk, do something to push away the emotion, this is the opportunity to dive into that emotion and let it shake you and make you cry and upset you. And ask yourself, why am I reacting like this? Like, why has this simple event made me so crazy? And if you will sit quietly and keep asking yourself, maybe the answer doesn't come then. Sometimes the expression sleep on it is very smart. Ask yourself as you're falling asleep, why is this upsetting me? What do I need to learn from this event? And go to sleep. And you'll often have the solution when you wake up in the morning. So the biggest event in my life that taught me this lesson was when I was married in California. This is where my son was born. I was married to a man who was a beautiful spiritual artist, musician, but he was also a Vietnam vet. So he had been in the army during the Vietnam War. And when I met him, he was suffering from post-traumatic stress, right? But I thought enough love, right, would solve that. And we did very well for a couple of years. And then when my son was about a year old, John, my husband, came home one night and he grabbed his carving axe that he carved djembe drums with, and he headed for the crib. And I ran to try and cut him off and got the baby, but he got us both down on the floor with this axe raised above his head to kill us. And this noise came out of me, and all I can call it is divine intervention, because it was the loudest roar I've ever heard in my life. And it's like it came from the bowels of somewhere. And it was so loud, the whole neighborhood heard it. And my husband froze. He couldn't believe the noise. And the neighbors crashed through the door and saw what was happening and pulled him off. And, you know, we later found out that he was dying from a brain tumor. And apparently brain tumors will cause this bizarre personality change in people. But I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was this man I loved had turned into a monster, and I had to go into hiding. So I became homeless with a baby. And I was terrified of him for years because we were in Encinitas, which was Paramahamsa Yogananda's main town. And, you know, by the grace of God, I started learning his teachings because I went by his bookstore one day and Krishna's quote was in the window and it said, "Even a little practice of this technique will save you from great fear." And I thought, I have to stop being afraid. I cannot live terrified all the time. So I started his Kriya Yoga. And so this was when Guruji was a teenager. So he was not available to me. But luckily, you know, they say that you will be given your solutions somehow. So I was I started studying Yogananda's teachings and the topic of forgiveness kept coming up. And I thought, yeah, it's easy to forgive some people, but you can't forgive someone who tried to kill you. I thought and obviously that's how wars start, when you will not forgive that. But it wouldn't go away and it just kept hounding me. So I thought, okay, I'll try. So I tried saying it out loud. I forgive him. And it was just words. My heart wasn't in it. I still hated him and I wanted him dead. I just wanted him to go away so the problem would go away. And that's when the message came to me, you were him in a past life. And by forgiving him, you will forgive yourself. And I was thunderstruck that I could have been a monster, right? That I was so busy being a victim in this scene that it was hard to believe that the tables had been turned in a past life and I had been the monster and I had terrorized someone. And when that realization finally hit, I just was begging for forgiveness. I was pleading with God, you know, saying, I'm sorry, forgive me. You know, I had no idea that I could have done this to somebody. And as soon as I said that, it's like the cage I had put my husband in vanished. And I ran into him one day. I was coming around a corner and there he was, and we saw each other and there was nothing there. There was no emotion. We just gave each other big smiles and we started talking. And eventually I felt he was safe enough that I let our son start visiting with him. We'd go to the beach so that he could see that his dad was a lovely person, that he wasn't always insane. And when I told my husband what I'd done, that I'd been saying out loud, I forgive, he said to me, I know when you started doing that because I felt like the world didn't hate me anymore. And I just felt horrible that here's this poor guy dying of a brain tumor and he could feel all of this hate pouring on him because he had no memory of the event. He had no idea why we had left, right? It was a mystery to him why all of a sudden his family was gone. And years later, when I was in India, an Akashic reading was done for me. And the Akashic records are like this universal record of everything that has happened to us, will happen to us. And I was told that, yes, you had to get together in this lifetime to resolve this lesson because it was unfinished the last time. But they said, because you forgave him, you are clear of the lesson. And the fact that he died without resolving that anger in him, he's doomed to reincarnate, have to find the same situation again and try to do it properly. So you are never free of these lessons until you resolve them. And what I was told was forgiveness. It was almost more of a crime not to forgive than to have done the deed, because that holding the grudge and the anger actually goes on longer than the event. And that's what Guruji keeps telling us. He says, these events are going to come and go in your life because of your karma, right? So you have to learn to move through them quickly. They come, get the lesson, let them go. Like he said, don't hang on to the past. You have to keep moving, okay? You have to keep, when a lesson hits, deal with it. Don't run away. Don't try to make excuses. I remember trying to explain this to a girlfriend once who said she was very spiritual. And she said, oh, I know all that stuff, but she's a bitch. I was like, no, I think you missed the point. And as Guruji said, when you say a statement like that, you should follow with, and so am I, right? Like whenever you hurl an insult like that at somebody, they're impossible, and so am I, right? Like these are mirrors that we're walking up to in our lives over and over and over again. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says how important it is for atonement. And atonement means begging for forgiveness before you die, because otherwise you are doomed to repeat that lifetime again, right? And it's like being in a school. You don't want to be stuck in grade 1 forever. You don't want to keep failing the test, coming back in grade 1, failing the test, right? We're all supposed to move up through this school into higher realms, where the guru can really work with us. But if he sees that we're stuck way down at the bottom with really basic stuff, just love, forgive, right? There's not a lot of rules, but so often we refuse to deal with it. We refuse to follow what the real lesson is. And I just had something else here. As Guruji said, it's ridiculous to say that a priest can forgive you. And for those of us raised in the Catholic religion, you can't just behave badly and go to a priest and have them say, I forgive you. Guruji said, that's ridiculous. He said, you have to really atone. You have to really feel bad that you behaved that way. And then God can forgive you. But he said, if you aren't sincere and forgive yourself, God can't help you at all. And nobody else can in God's place. So, as he said, do the atonement while you still remember these events. Because as you get older, you'll forget them, right? Like you look at some old people and they've conveniently swept away the parts of their life that they didn't like, the sad parts, or the parts where they were stifled and suppressed. And you see this anger in people, and you can see it when they're walking down the street, right? They're all hunched over and their faces are just like closed up. And that's resentment and anger from a lifetime of just taking on these issues and getting madder and madder and angrier, right? If you deal with these events when they happen, and when you have time, go into your past. And like today, when you guys end this call, sit down and write down any names that you think you haven't dealt with, right? An apology that you should have given, or somebody that you should have forgiven. So both sides of the coin, like when you were the bad guy or when someone else was the bad guy, in both cases, let it go, right? Just forgive it. And if it feels like too big of a burden, this is where the expression comes. They say, lay it at the Guru's feet, right? This is where you can just say, Guruji, this is bigger than I can handle. Take it. Just take it off me. And what you'll see is that weight will be lifted. Okay, because there are some things that it almost feels like they're buried so deep in us, they're almost impossible for us to understand well enough, right? To remove. So just say, Guruji, take it. I don't know how to deal with this. And then just move on, right? Don't just keep rummaging around in your head. Let it go. Like honestly let it go and move on. So the other part that I was going to tell you, some of you heard my temple satsang about this, but this was me asking for forgiveness. And it was at the end of my time in India when I was in the Shaivite tradition. And for a while, I was being bounced around to remote locations that just needed somebody to be in residence to protect the place. And everyone thought it was strange that this white woman was being sent around South India where I didn't speak the language, but I made do, and it was an adventure. So I thought, okay, let's just do it. So they would give me a monthly allowance and I would buy my food, pay for Wi-Fi, and I had a cell phone. And so I was feeling pretty confident about what was happening, and I do the morning sadhana. It took about 3 hours because there was always a deity on the property. And then all of a sudden, the karma kicked in and the money stopped coming from the ashram for me to buy anything. And I had my bank card for Canada for my little savings account for emergencies, and it expired. So all of a sudden I was isolated with nowhere to go. And this is when you know a karmic lesson is hitting, right? When you can see there's no escape, that you're being held in place because something's up. And what was up was I starved. So month after month went by, the electricity was cut off, the phone died. There were some edible leaves and berries on the property that I ate. And a Hanuman temple, which wasn't part of the Shaivite tradition, but there was this 600-year-old tiny little temple at the end of my dirt road. And when they saw what was happening to me, because I literally turned into a 100-year-old woman, my hair went gray. I was down to about, I don't know, I was a skeleton. There was no meat on me anymore. I was just bones, and I needed a stick to walk. But I would go to that temple, and the priest, he would always offer 2 bananas to Hanuman in the morning. So he would give me 1. And on Saturdays, they would cook prasad, and they would always give me extras. But by the end of the 3 months, I couldn't even eat, the 1 bowl they gave me. My stomach had shrunk so much and my organs were shutting down. And so I couldn't even eat when it was given to me. And so for the 3 months, I was pretty much in victim mode. How dare they? What have I done? You said you protect me. And it was 3 months of being an idiot. And then finally one day I said, have I done this to somebody? And it was a resounding yes. And it played in my head. I don't know how many lifetimes ago, but I was an officer who denied food to people in the village and sent it to the army. And so I don't know how many people had died because of me following orders. And I was just devastated. And I cried and cried and cried and begged forgiveness because I realized this was something that was so huge, and who knows how long I had been trying to remove this and kept running from it. And I think because of being a sannyas and finally saying, I want all the karma gone, that's why I had to deal with it. And that's why I was going to be held in place till I died or got the lesson. And as soon as I understood that it was my fault that I was starving, that it was my karma to pay the debt, and I begged for forgiveness. And then I heard a voice at the gate to the property, and it was a woman from the ashram with money and food. So literally, as soon as I got the lesson, it ended. Everything changed. It was the most miraculous thing I've ever seen. And for her, it was a lesson because she was mad that she was being sent on this errand to deliver food and money because she was very high up in the ashram and she never did things like this. And as soon as she saw me, she went, oh my God, I know why I was sent. She said, I've been so preoccupied with the gossip and the politics and, getting new clothes or new jewelry. And she said, here you are living the path. She said, I can't believe what we've done to you. And I realized, like when she phoned the accounting department and they were screaming, why didn't you answer the phone? And she said, You don't understand. Nobody sent her money for 3 months. And I guess everyone in the accounting department looked at each other like, I thought you were taking care of her. No, you were supposed to take care of her. And that chaos was created so that I would go through the lesson, right? It was nobody's fault that they all thought their buddy was handling it. That confusion was put there specifically so that I would deal with what I had to deal with. And then as soon as I got the lesson, it was over, right? New clothes were sent to me. Everything changed immediately. And that's where the power of forgiveness is. Like for me, understanding that this lesson was happening because of me and asking for forgiveness instead of hurling judgment and guilt at the other people, right? You have to look at every situation and go, why is this happening? You know, what have I done to trigger this, sequence of events? And as soon as you can do that, as Guruji says, forgive yourself, then forgive the others, and then God will forgive you and the lesson's over, right? And it doesn't have to follow you anymore. And that's what I'm finding is life just keeps getting lighter and funnier because I'm not carrying that weight anymore, right? Every time I've removed the need to have a boss who's an idiot. Like my friend said, you are like a magnet for bad bosses. But I realized it was probably part of that lifetime where I was in the army and I probably was a bad boss, right? I was probably like a dictator, wouldn't, hear anyone else's side and just followed the rules because I attracted so many people like that until I got this lesson. And now I've never had trouble with people ever since, right? I have not had, and even people who are considered difficult are not difficult when I'm dealing with them. So it's what's in you is triggering behavior in people. And I know that's a tricky one to get your head around, but someone may be horrible to this person and lovely to the next person, and it's because of your samskaras. It's because of what you need to learn and what you need to flush out of your own system. And it's hard to follow Guruji's direction of just love because a lot of times there's so much pain and anger inside, but that's from the past. And so that's what you need to dig out. And every time someone sets off that pain or anger, forgive them, right? Instead of taking it the other way and going, you need to apologize to me. No, you apologize first. And I had a small example that happened when I came back from India. Involuntarily, I didn't realize Guruji got me kicked out so he could come find me in Canada. And so again, instead of getting mad at the customs people who were kicking me out, I thought something's up, right? I could just tell that the game was changing and something was up. And it was Guruji. So ta-da! So God bless those customs agents that wouldn't let me back into India. But when I came back, my brother lost his mind because he didn't understand what I was doing. Oh, now you're coming back. Oh, now you want us to accept you back in the family. And he was it set off bombs in him, right? So obviously a samskara of his erupted. And so the next time I saw him, it was like somebody else was speaking for me. And I said, I am so sorry that my presence is causing you so much pain. And it just floored him, right? Because there was no fight in that statement, right? I wasn't pointing a finger at him, or I just said, I'm sorry. And it ended it. Like it was unbelievable. It disconnected whatever was starting to roll in his head and removed it. So, I've personally experienced this so often now that I see it as the greatest gift you can give yourself. If you will just go through that list Write it down. How many people do you think there is a hurt or and it doesn't matter what it was, but if you think it hasn't been resolved, resolve it. And as Guruji said, if they're still alive, don't be ashamed, don't be whatever, just make the call or show up and say, I am so sorry, for this time when I did that. And he said, it doesn't even matter if they accept the apology. That's not the point. The point is you apologized, right? And the same thing, if somebody asks you for forgiveness, give it, right? Just unconditionally say, it's over, let's start fresh, right? Let's let the past be past. And I've had relationships renew completely by doing that. A lot of people were so upset with my choice to sort of walk away from the world and take sannyas vows. When I came back, they just sort of watched me, and then finally they just were like, can we start over? And it's like, yeah, let's introduce each other, again, fresh. And you are fresh every day. You don't have to be a product of your past. So if you will just, at the end of the day, complete things, right? Say, I'm sorry I behaved like this. I shouldn't have yelled at this person. Tomorrow I'll call her and apologize. Like whatever you need to do to finish that day out clean, do it, because you might not wake up tomorrow, right? Like you don't know if the plug will be pulled on you. So, as Krishna says, atonement has to be done before this life ends so that you're not trapped in that same cycle, those same lessons the next time you come back. The next time you come back, you want it better, right? You want to be elevated out of the muck like a lotus, right? I think let's see. So as Guruji said, everything that happens to you is due to the law of samsara. What we have done, we must now be on the receiving end. As Guruji says, let it come, let it go. When you don't let go, you create more karma. So it just keeps building on itself. He says, sit in the consciousness of being a witness. This lesson comes into your life because of past actions, so clear it, balance it, restore it, and move forward. And that's it. Jai Gurudev.